Welcome to Broadcasting Seeds, where we plant ideas in fertile minds and water them with a healthy dose of curiosity. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we're diving into a topic that might make your Christmas tree ornaments rattle just a little: the origins of Christmas. Now, before you start clutching your Santa hats, let me assure you, this isn't an attack on Christmas or your family's favorite holiday traditions. It's an exploration of how this beloved holiday came to be, and the curious mix of pagan roots, Christian theology, and good old-fashioned cultural compromise that brought us here. Here's the thing: Christmas, as we know it, didn't just pop out of the heavens one starry night like the angel on your nativity scene. It's a patchwork quilt of ancient festivals, customs, and, dare I say it, a bit of spiritual warfare. Yule logs, mistletoe, gift exchanges, feasting. These didn't start with a jolly guy in red. They've been part of human celebrations for centuries, long before Christianity claimed December 25th as the day of Christ's birth. Today, we're going to dig deep into the roots of Christmas, peeling back the layers of Yule, Saturnalia, and other ancient celebrations that paved the way for the holiday season. We'll talk about the early church's clever, some might say opportunistic, strategy for blending pagan traditions with Christian messages, and we'll explore what I like to call the war for the winter solstice, where ancient customs and new beliefs duked it out for cultural supremacy. So, buckle up and grab some eggnog, or maybe a mug of Viking-style mead if you're feeling historically accurate. We're about to unwrap the story behind the season in a way that will make you see your Christmas decorations in a whole new light. Let's get started. All right, let's kick things off by heading way back, like prehistoric humans huddling around a fire back. The winter solstice is the shortest day and longest night of the year, usually falling around December 21st or 22nd in the northern hemisphere. To our ancestors, this wasn't just an astronomical event. It was a cosmic turning point, a literal light at the end of the tunnel. The solstice marked the moment when the sun, their life-giving beacon of warmth and sustenance, began its slow return. Now imagine this. You're living thousands of years ago in a world with no electric lights, central heating, or DoorDash. Winter's a real jerk. It's cold, it's dark, and if you didn't stock up on food, it's also a season-long Hunger Games. So the solstice wasn't just a reason to party. It was a survival milestone. Hey, we made it halfway through the darkness without freezing to death or being eaten by wolves. Let's celebrate. For ancient cultures, the solstice was a sign of hope and renewal. Take the Neolithic people of Britain, for example. They didn't have TikTok or cable news, but they did have Stonehenge. Archaeologists believe this massive stone monument was built, at least in part, to track the movements of the sun, making it a literal solstice calendar. During the winter solstice, the sun aligns perfectly with the stones, casting light through the darkest day. Coincidence? Hardly. These folks knew what they were doing. Meanwhile, over in Scandinavia, the Norse were celebrating Yule. They believed the sun was a giant wheel of fire, probably powered by Viking-grade optimism, that rolled closer to Earth as the days grew longer. To honor this cosmic wheel, they'd light bonfires, feast, and, of course, drink mead. Because what's a winter celebration without a little liquid warmth? The Celts, too, had their solstice rituals. Druids would gather mistletoe, more on that later, and hold ceremonies celebrating the Oak King's victory over the Holly King. Yes, they had a whole mythological WWF match going on to symbolize the rebirth of the sun. And let's not forget the Romans. They didn't have Stonehenge or Viking fire wheels, but they did have Saturnalia, a week-long festival that revolved around the solstice. But we'll get to their wild party scene in the next segment. The point is, whether you were building massive stone structures or just lighting a fire to keep the wolves at bay, the winter solstice was a big deal. It reminded people that darkness wasn't forever, that the sun would return, and that life, despite the challenges, was worth celebrating. Now here's where it gets interesting. These solstice celebrations weren't just about survival. They were deeply symbolic, tied to themes of death and rebirth. Think about it. The sun dies on the darkest day and is reborn as the days grow longer. Sound familiar? It should, because that's the same kind of imagery Christianity later adopted for Christmas. But we're not there yet. First, we need to take a closer look at Yule and its spirit of evergreen resilience. Ready to head north and get cozy with some Viking traditions? Let's roll. Now that we've set the stage with the winter solstice, let's dive into one of the most iconic solstice celebrations, Yule. If you've ever decked the halls with boughs of holly or lugged a pine tree into your living room, you've got Yule to thank. This was the Norse festival of the winter solstice, and let me tell you, these Vikings knew how to party like it was 9999. Yule revolved around the idea of endurance and rebirth. In the harsh Scandinavian winter, survival wasn't just about muscle, it was about mindset. So they turned to the evergreen trees, symbols of life that could weather even the cruelest frost. These trees weren't just decorative, they were spiritual icons. By bringing evergreens into their homes, the Norse people believed they were inviting the strength of nature itself to protect their families. And then there was the Yule log, not the chocolate dessert, but an actual massive log. Families would select the biggest, baddest piece of wood they could find, drag it into their homes, and light it on fire. This wasn't just for heat, though that certainly helped. The burning log symbolized the sun's return, with its crackling flames chasing away the darkness. Plus, it was said that the longer the log burned, the more luck the family would have in the coming year. No pressure, right? Feasting was also a cornerstone of Yule. Picture a Viking banquet table piled high with roasted meat, bread, and ale. This wasn't just about indulgence. It was about gratitude. By celebrating abundance in the face of scarcity, they honored the gods and strengthened their community bonds. And of course, there was mead, always mead, because what's a Norse celebration without a little honey wine to keep things lively? But Yule wasn't just about feasting and fire. It was also a time for storytelling. Around the hearth, families would share tales of their ancestors, gods, and mythical creatures. One such story involved the Wild Hunt, a ghostly procession led by Odin himself, riding through the skies on his eight-legged steed, Sleipnir. Sound like a certain sleigh-riding figure we know? Hold that thought. Now, let's talk mistletoe. To the Norse, mistletoe was more than a holiday decoration. It was a plant with deep spiritual significance. According to legend, the god Balder was killed with a mistletoe arrow, but through the love of his mother Frigg, he was resurrected. This made mistletoe a symbol of life and protection. The custom of kissing under it? That likely came later, but the idea of mistletoe bringing blessings started here. Yule's influence is still everywhere in modern Christmas. The Christmas tree? Straight out of the Viking playbook. The Yule log? Yep, that's Norse too. Even the tradition of caroling can trace its roots back to Yule, when villagers would go from house to house, singing and spreading cheer in exchange for food or drink. But Yule wasn't the only winter celebration in town. While the Norse were lighting fires and toasting to Odin, the Romans were throwing one of history's rowdiest parties, Saturnalia. It's a festival so wild it makes Yule look like a book club. Ready to head to ancient Rome and crash the party? Let's go. Now, let's leave the frosty forests of Scandinavia and head south to the bustling streets of ancient Rome, where they had their own unique way of dealing with winter's gloom. Enter Saturnalia, a festival so extravagant it makes your office holiday party look like amateur hour. If Yule was about resilience and rebirth, Saturnalia was about cutting loose, flipping the script, and letting chaos reign, at least for a week. Saturnalia, celebrated from December 17th to the 23rd, was dedicated to Saturn, the Roman god of agriculture and time. The Romans believed this was the season to honor Saturn's golden age, a mythical time of equality and abundance. And what better way to honor a god of abundance than by throwing a week-long rager? This was a festival of role reversal, where social norms were turned completely upside down. Slaves were served by their masters, commoners dressed as kings, and everyone set aside their daily grind to revel in the spirit of freedom and equality, temporary though it was. Imagine your boss serving you coffee while you lounge at their desk. Now multiply that energy by 100 and you've got Saturnalia. The streets of Rome were alive with celebration. People adorned their homes with greenery, sound familiar, and lit candles to symbolize the return of light. Gifts were exchanged, but not the kind you'd find under a modern Christmas tree. Instead, Saturnalia gifts were more about humor and wit than extravagance. Think gag gifts like clay figurines or joke-filled scrolls. One of the festival's most striking features was the Lord of Misrule, a figure chosen from the lower classes to preside over the festivities. This mock king had the power to issue silly decrees, like ordering everyone to wear mismatched sandals or sing ridiculous songs. It was all in good fun, a reminder that the social order wasn't as rigid as it seemed. And then there was the feasting. Oh, the feasting. Picture banquet tables groaning under the weight of roasted meats, bread, fruit, and wine. Lots and lots of wine. Romans didn't just eat, they indulged. It was a time to celebrate the abundance of the harvest, even as winter tightened its grip. But Saturnalia wasn't all hedonism. It also carried deep spiritual meaning. The reversal of roles and shedding of inhibitions symbolized a return to Saturn's golden age, a utopian ideal where everyone was equal and abundance was the norm. It was a way of acknowledging the hardships of the present while hoping for better days ahead, a theme that resonates even today. So how does Saturnalia connect to Christmas? The answer lies in the early Christian church's genius for adaptation. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, church leaders saw the appeal of Saturnalia's joyful chaos and sought to harness it. They didn't ban the festival outright, too risky when people loved it so much. Instead, they gradually infused it with Christian symbolism, shifting the focus to the birth of Christ while keeping the festive spirit alive. When you look at Christmas traditions like gift giving, lighting candles, and decking the halls with greenery, you're seeing echoes of Saturnalia. Even the concept of a holiday season filled with goodwill and togetherness owes a nod to Rome's legendary festival. But Saturnalia was just one piece of the puzzle. As Christianity grew, it didn't just adapt one festival, it synthesized many, creating a hybrid holiday that could appeal to everyone. In the next segment, we'll explore how the early church navigated this cultural balancing act and turned competing traditions into one cohesive celebration. Ready to see how the pieces came together? Let's keep going. All right, we've explored Yule's evergreens and Saturnalia's chaotic revelry, but now it's time to talk about how the early Christian church stepped in, saw the writing on the solstice wall, and said, "We can work with this." What we're about to dive into is less about religion and more about marketing, a campaign so successful that it turned competing traditions into a unified holiday. Let's start with the big question: why December 25th? Spoiler alert, it wasn't because Jesus was born on that date. Biblical scholars generally agree that the actual timing of the Christ's birth is a mystery, and early Christians didn't celebrate it at all. So why pick this particular day? Well, the answer lies in strategic brilliance. The winter solstice, Yule, Saturnalia, these were all hugely popular celebrations. People weren't going to stop partying just because a new faith was on the rise. So instead of trying to squash these traditions, the church decided to co-opt them. By declaring December 25th as the date of Christ's birth, they overlaid Christian meaning onto existing festivals, effectively absorbing them into the new faith. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about resonance. The solstice had always symbolized light overcoming darkness, life returning after death. Sound familiar? The themes of rebirth and hope were a perfect match for the Christian narrative of Christ's birth. By aligning with these pre-existing ideas, the church made its message more relatable and accessible. But they didn't stop at the date. The church also adopted and adapted pagan customs. Take the evergreen tree, a Yule staple. Early Christians reframed it as a symbol of eternal life, connecting it to Christ. The Yule log, repurposed as a metaphor for the light of God. Even gift-giving, a hallmark of Saturnalia, was recast as a gesture of Christian charity and goodwill. The strategy wasn't without resistance. Some purists in the early church weren't thrilled about mixing sacred celebrations with what they saw as pagan frivolity. They wanted a clear break from the old ways. But the more pragmatic leaders saw the bigger picture. By embracing these customs, they could win over converts without forcing them to abandon their beloved traditions. It wasn't just about winning hearts and minds. It was about creating a sense of unity. The Roman Empire was vast and culturally diverse, and Christianity had to appeal to people from all walks of life. By blending elements of Yule, Saturnalia, and other solstice traditions, the church crafted a holiday that could be celebrated by everyone, regardless of their background. This process of adaptation wasn't instantaneous. It took centuries for Christmas to fully evolve into the holiday we know today. But the foundation was laid by this cultural compromise, a testament to humanity's ability to synthesize old and new into something greater than the sum of its parts. So, what's the takeaway here? The origins of Christmas aren't about erasing the past. They're about transformation. They remind us that traditions are living, breathing things that adapt to the needs of the people celebrating them. And while the Christian church may have won the war for the winter solstice, it did so not by conquering, but by collaborating. In our final segment, we'll explore how this blend of pagan and Christian traditions continues to shape modern Christmas and what it reveals about the enduring human need for light, hope, and connection. Let's wrap this up and bring it into the present day. Ready? Let's keep going. So, here we are, modern-day Christmas, a holiday decked out in twinkling lights, loaded with gifts, and wrapped in more layers of tradition than your aunt's infamous fruitcake. But how much of what we celebrate today comes from the ancient clash of customs we've been talking about? Spoiler, more than you might think. Let's start with the obvious, the Christmas tree. It's basically a Yule evergreen in disguise. Whether you hang tinsel or popcorn garlands, that tree stands as a centuries-old symbol of life, enduring through the darkest days. The star on top? a Christian overlay representing the Star of Bethlehem. But the tree itself, that's pure solstice spirit. What about Santa Claus? While he's often traced back to St. Nicholas, the jolly, gift-giving saint, there's a heavy dose of Norse influence in the mix. Remember Odin and the Wild Hunt? The image of an old man with a flowing beard flying through the night sky on a magical steed is straight out of Viking mythology. Over time, this figure morphed into the Santa we know today, trading Sleipnir's 8 legs for 8 reindeer. Coincidence? I think not. Then there's the gift-giving tradition. Sure, the wise men brought gifts to baby Jesus, but the idea of exchanging presents around the solstice has deep roots in Saturnalia. During that festival, Romans gave small, often humorous gifts to each other as tokens of goodwill. Sound familiar? Whether it's a heartfelt present or a white elephant gag, we're still carrying on that tradition. And let's not forget the festive feast. From the Norse Yule banquet to Saturnalia's indulgent spreads, the idea of gathering around a table to share food and drink is universal. Today's Christmas dinner is a direct descendant of these ancient celebrations, even if it's turkey and stuffing instead of roasted boar and mead. Now, here's the kicker. Even the tension we feel around the reason for the season debates today echoes the ancient war for the solstice. In some ways, we're still negotiating the balance between sacred and secular, old and new, personal and communal. The commercialization of Christmas, that's just the latest iteration of a centuries-long tug of war over what the holiday means and who gets to define it. But here's the beauty of it all. Christmas, like the solstice celebrations that came before it, is ultimately about light overcoming darkness. It's about hope, renewal, and the joy of connection. Whether you're lighting a candle, hanging an ornament, or sharing a meal, you're participating in a tradition that spans millennia and transcends cultures. So, what does this legacy teach us? It reminds us that traditions evolve not just because of conflict, but because of compromise. They adapt to meet the needs of the people who celebrate them. And in a world that often feels divided, Christmas stands as a testament to humanity's ability to find common ground, even if it's over a plate of cookies and a cup of eggnog. With that in mind, let's not get too caught up in whether our celebrations are authentic or correct. Instead, let's embrace the beautiful mess of it all, the pagan, the Christian, the commercial, and remember that it's all part of the same story. A story about finding light in the darkest times and celebrating the miracle of life itself. Now, let's wrap things up and bring this episode home. Stick around for the outro. And there you have it, folks. The origins of Christmas laid bare like a tree without ornaments, from the Norse Yule to the Roman Saturnalia, and finally the Christian adaptation that brought it all together. Christmas is nothing short of a cultural mashup masterpiece. It's a celebration that reminds us of humanity's resilience, creativity, and, let's face it, our love of a good party. But more than that, it's a testament to our ability to find meaning in the cycles of nature and the rhythms of life. Whether you're lighting a Yule log, decorating a Christmas tree, or sneaking one more gingerbread cookie, you're participating in traditions that are older and deeper than you might have realized. So here's my challenge to you this holiday season. Look at your traditions with fresh eyes. Celebrate the light in the darkness, whether that's the light of Christ, the sun's return, or the warm glow of your living room. And remember, the true spirit of Christmas, past, present, and future, is about hope, renewal, and connection. Before we close out, if you enjoyed this episode of Broadcasting Seeds, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this episode with someone who needs a little historical enlightenment, and leave a review. Your support helps this podcast grow and keeps these seeds of knowledge sprouting in curious minds. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep planting those seeds of thought. Until next time, this is Bennett Tanton signing off. Have a Merry Christmas, or Yule, or Saturnalia, or whatever makes your solstice bright. See you next episode.
Sun hangs low on a frozen sky, fields asleep, the rivers dry. Old men watched the shadows crawl, wondered if the light would fall. We marked the days by fire and song, hoped the night wouldn't last too long. Every breath a prayer held tight, waiting on the longest night. Stone and wood and candle flame, different gods but the same old ache. Every soul knows winter's test, every heart is looking west. So we gather round the fire, sing of hope and something higher. From the north to Rome's old roads, through the dark the promise goes. When the world feels cold and far, still we follow the same old star. In the longest, blackest night, we remember how to find the light. Oak and pine stand tall and green, life still lives where death has been. Yule log burns, the wheel turns slow, what was lost will rise again. We know masters served and servants crowned, laughter flipped the world upside down. For one wild night the chains came loose, chaos danced in borrowed shoes. From the halls of gods and men to the cross and back again, different names, the same refrain, born through loss, baptized in pain. So we gather round the fire, sing of hope and something higher. From the north to Rome's old roads, through the dark the promise goes. When the world feels cold and far, still we follow the same old star. In the longest, blackest night, we remember how to find the light. Turn the wheel, the sun will rise, ash to flame before our eyes. Hold the line, the dawn is near, light returns, there's nothing to fear. Church bells rang where drums once played, new songs born from old parade. Faith wore the colors of the land, truth held gently in human hands. What survived was never lies, just the need to lift our eyes. Every age, every tongue sings the same song, old and young. So we gather round the fire, sing of hope and something higher. From the north to Rome's old roads, through the dark the promise goes. When the world feels cold and far, still we follow the same old star. In the longest, blackest night, we remember how to find the light. Breaks slow, but it always breaks. Morning comes, for heaven's sake. Light was never gone from sight, it was waiting in the night.